Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton and Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Greg, welcome to today's live stream. How you doing?
How about that countdown? That is straight uptown, and no more nasty grams from Borat in Uzbekistan or whatever. So wasn't it the Azerbaijan soccer club or something like that that claimed ownership of that?
It was something like that, but now
Yeah.
I guess Yanni is sponsoring our countdown, uh, right? Or isn't Yanni the landscape musician? What's that style of music called? No.
Sure.
Okay. Well,
Soft jazz,
no.
bedtime music. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
It's that soothing landscape stuff that
Yes.
sometimes you hear in your dentist's office, maybe.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
hey, we'll look into that. But regardless, folks, we've got a big show here
Yeah.
today. We are so excited about our guest. And first off, before we kind of foreshadow that, it's important to note, Greg, that we live stream every Monday and Thursday at 12 noon Eastern time. Monday, of course, is our Supply Chain Buzz, where we tackle the news and developments, some of which you got to keep your finger on the pulse of. Thursdays is our Baskin Robbins vibe, right? 31 flavors and then some. A little bit of variety for everybody. Do you remember Baskin Robbins, Greg?
Yeah. Aren't they still around?
I'm not sure, but we used to go there a lot.
I think they're owned by Dunkin' Donuts, the same company that owns Dunkin' Donuts. It seems like, excuse me, not far from our house is a Baskin Robbins Dunkin' Donuts combo.
I think you're right.
So,
That
31 flavors. Bressler's had 33 flavors.
Oh, they had the one up.
It was the ice cream wars, kind of like the cola wars in the 80s. We were at war in the 80s. Now we've got the chicken sandwich wars.
Hey, whatever works, I guess, for folks. But we spent a lot of time as a kid in Baskin Robbins and the Pink Dipper back up where we grew up. But and by the way, thank you, Mr. Benjamin Goldklang. Soundscapes, they are called soundscapes.
That's right.
So we'll see. Hope
Probably not hard
you
to
well.
tell. I'm not a huge follower of Yanni, which probably heresy.
Well, let's do this. We've got an outstanding guest today. We got Dr. Sherrika Sanders, who was recently named one of the top 50 influencers in the world in the advanced manufacturing, supply chain, and logistics space. And that's just one of her many cool things about her journey and all the big impact she's made. So, and she's a repeat guest. We loved having her on about 500 episodes ago. So it's been too long. So
wow.
Yeah. Can you believe that?
I think it was before my time even.
And that's, man.
Stop it. Just
did anything happen pre-Greg White? Well, hey, y'all are in for a treat with our guest today. So we're going to get to Sherica in just a second. But before we do, Greg, we got to do some work, right?
Yep.
So let's want to share a couple of program notes. As always, if you enjoyed today's live stream, be sure to check us out wherever you get your podcast from at Supply Chain Now. On our main channel, we dropped today was a replay of Monday's Manufacturing Monday version of the Supply Chain Buzz. And we had Billy Taylor join us. Billy was formerly a director of manufacturing and the chief diversity and inclusion officer with the Goodyear Company.
Right.
And Billy brought it on Monday, didn't he, Greg?
It's manufacturing week, I guess. And yes, yeah, I'm not sure how many different types of t-shirts we're having printed, but I mean, he really does make it so consumable, doesn't he?
Absolutely.
Clearly an expert walks in, he can clearly walk into these facilities and almost analyze the problems by walking in the door. So incredible skill, but also I love the way he just makes it so simple for those of us not in the know.
Yes. Stories and humor and all the knowledge. So y'all check out that replay wherever you get your podcast from. Tuesday, earlier this week, we published Stop Talking, Act. Sustainable Logistics Initiatives. Tell us about this cool conversation here, Greg.
Peter Stangeland, the sustainability Viking from Norway. And if he doesn't look like that picture right now. He has been growing his beard during COVID, so he looks like he ought to be on an episode of Vikings. So check him out, by the way, because it's also on YouTube. But DB Schenker, the company that he works for, has an incredible sustainability initiative in Norway. And Norway, in and of itself, has an incredible sustainability initiatives, not just regulations by the government, and they do have some of those, but also just the people are so incredibly aware of sustainability. And as Peter says in this episode, they live off the land. It's an oil producing country. It is an agriculture country. So there's a very relatively small area of the country where you can grow anything because the country goes inside the Arctic Circle.
Wow.
So it's a beautiful place. It's one of my favorite countries. Oslo contains my favorite restaurant in the world, and I am not telling anyone what it is, because I want it for myself. Selfish. But do listen to Peter, because he gives you tips on how to ignite your own sustainability initiative in your company, or to accelerate if you've already got an initiative and get things going, because they have got it going, right? Electric pedal driven electric carts, bikes for last mile delivery in Oslo. So things like that are what they're up to.
So check it out. Tequila Sunrise with a TECH, as in Greg's name there. Go ahead and wink. Go ahead. See what we did there. See what we did there. All right.
Get it?
So finally, we got two more quick notes. Hey, check out This Week in Business History. Kelly Barner stepped in, did a masterful job. Do y'all remember Metallica taking on Napster? I'd forgotten about this way back in the early internet days, kind of. So check it out, all in less than 20 minutes. She dives into some things that you've probably forgotten about. So check that out, This Week in Business History, wherever you get your podcast from. And finally, Kevin L. Jackson is leading this webinar on April 27th, setting the standard for supply chain security, especially from an ICT standpoint, information and communications technology, new acronym, at least new to me. And he's doing it in conjunction with a couple of companies, including the Telecommunications Industry Association, which is really the voice of that industry. So check that out, April 27th. You can learn more. I think we've got a link in the show notes, and you can learn more at supplychainnow.com. Okay. So, Greg, let's say a couple of quick hellos to people so we can bring in our wonderful guest here today. We got David with us. Good morning to you, David. Hope this finds you well.
I wasn't sure I was alive.
Peter, of course, is with us. Marie is with us. Hey, Marie, great to see you here today. Tell us where you're tuned in from. The Rainmaker, Todd Rains.
Rainmaker, I like it.
Madat, perhaps. I forgot your name wrong. I apologize. Please correct me, but tell us where you're tuned in from via LinkedIn. Ajinkia is also tuned in via LinkedIn. Great to have you. Tell us where you're from. Robert is with us. Let's see here. Is it Hakwe? Greg?
Hockey.
I bet it's hockey.
I don't know. It's been a long time.
Well, welcome.
Just go with Ha. Ha is easy.
Yeah, well, even mom maybe can't mess that up. But hey, make sure we get your name right, and tell us where you're from. Great to have you here.
That's Vietnam, I'm certain.
Yes. Rachel is with us from the Gulf Coast. I bet the beautiful Gulf Coast.
A coaster. Yes. Abhishek
is back. I think he was with us earlier this week and last week.
Yep.
From Chennai, right?
Chennai, yeah.
Chennai, thank you. Tom Raftery. Man, Tom, you've been on fire with the podcast here lately. I loved it. I enjoyed tuning in the stream, talking cars last week. So hello from Seville, Spain, right? Greg?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Simon, hello. After 6 months, he says, my open work banner is gone. Well, congratulations.
Yeah. Tell us about it. Let's know where you landed.
Yeah. Tell us what's going on. And finally, Alay is with us from Sudan. I think she joined us a week or so ago. And really dropped. I think she was with us when Sandra McQuillan was with us, and she was sharing some local supply chain news. So great to have you back via LinkedIn there, or Facebook there. Okay, so with no further ado, Greg, are you ready?
I am ready.
I'm telling you.
Yes, I'm ready.
This is like Christmas, not to play it up too much, Sherica, she's in the green room. But I told you your ears will be burning as we talk about you. This is really, it's always neat to have repeat guests on. But if you remember our episode, which was number 117, when Sherrika Sanders, PhD, first joined us, and we got so much feedback about it and about her that we re-released it as a classic, kind of a replay during the holidays. And then that our team's like, hey, we got to have her back, and let's have her on a live stream so we can, she can interact with our community and everyone in the cheap seats. So we're doing just that. So Greg, I'm gonna do as much justice as I can to intro her in 30 seconds here. So our guest today earned her PhD in inorganic chemistry. I could barely say that, much less navigate through that degree program, right?
Yeah. So we've established that she's smarter than we are. Oh, noted.
Undoubtedly. She then spent time in leadership roles at the Dow Chemical Company, Authentics, and now at Manor Polymers. She's been named one of the 20 most influential women in manufacturing, and then more recently named one of the top 50 influencers in the world, again, of advanced manufacturing, supply chain, and logistics. She's got a ton of stories and perspective. Please join me in welcoming Sherrika Sanders, PhD.
That was
Sherica, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Hi, everyone. How's it going?
It's fantastic. Great. Fantastic. We were a minute late getting you on, but
I feel like that was a pretty good intro, though, Sherica. Was it worth waiting for?
It was worth waiting for. Yes.
Yes. I'm intimidated, so that's part of the key to a good intro.
Don't be at all.
Well, it's so nice to have you back and have the opportunity not just to check in with you and kind of rekindle ourselves with your journey and your stories and your point of view, but then share that live with all other folks that are part of the journey with us here today. So, Sherica, for the handful of folks that may have not been able to catch that early episode, I know you do plenty of keynotes and plenty of other shows, but let's get to know you a little bit better here. So, first off, tell us where you grew up.
I am a Southern girl. I was born and raised in Shreveport, Louisiana, and then went to college in New Orleans.
That's right, the University of New Orleans, right?
Xavier.
Oh, Xavier.
Yeah, remember we talked about that.
Yes, we did talk about that. Yes,
Xavier University of Louisiana.
That is, that's right. And the mascot, remind me.
Gold Rush.
The Gold Rush, yes. Man, it's taking me right back. Yeah. 2 years ago.
Yes.
The Gold Rush. So y'all were talking at pre-show, y'all were talking food. And of course, here in the South, we certainly love our food. Folks love food everywhere. But growing up in Shreveport, I'm gonna put you on the spot. What's one dish or restaurant that was just a big part of your early childhood journey?
So there was a restaurant when I was growing up. It was a seafood restaurant, and it was called Freeman and Harris. It was a staple in our home, and they had the best stuffed shrimp, and fried shrimp, and just shrimp any way you name it.
I feel like I'm on Forrest Gump, Sherica.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And then it was sold and it became Pete Harris. So that it stayed within that family. So it was Freeman and Harris and Pete Harris. And so now that one was sold too, but they still make the food at a different restaurant. And they have like this, their own signature tartar sauce that is to die for.
Really?
And so if you go to Shreveport, it's a restaurant on Monkhouse. You have to go there and get their seafood.
Well, let's make a reservation and go this weekend, Greg. You got me sold. I'm sold.
Yeah, next time we drive to Austin, Scott, we'll.
It's hard to find him.
Yeah.
So Rachel says her husband has her PhD in inorganic chemistry. It's a hard journey. So congrats, Sherica. I don't even know. I want to be careful about. I don't want to illustrate my really poor intellect when it comes to chemistry. I'm not sure what inorganic.
Let me do that.
Okay, let's do that.
What is inorganic chemistry? How's that?
So listen, Rachel, I mean, it definitely was a hard journey. I was just talking to somebody about this just yesterday, and that getting a PhD, I would do it all over again, but I'm glad that I don't have to.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that, you know, it's rewarding, but at the same time, it's like, oh my God, is this journey ever going to end? Am I ever going to see any benefit from this? And then as soon as it happens, you see it, and it's like, oh, thank God.
Well, so that's a perfect segue. And I'm glad, Greg, I'm glad you just came out and asked. So when you look back at early childhood or your educational journey, you know, what's a big eureka moment that you still reflect on these days?
My eureka moment is when I actually decided that I even wanted to major in chemistry. And it's a cool story. So the summer before my junior year in high school, my parents were like, okay, you got to get a job. You got to do something. And a friend of mine told me about a summer program at Wiley College in Marshall, Texas. And when we got there, I said, okay, well, you know, I guess I got to go because I'm going to have to do something for the summer. And they gave us 3 options. They said, you can either do physics for the summer, you can do biology for the summer, or you can do chemistry for the summer. And we had already taken a tour of the campus. I saw the big rats in the biology lab, so that was a no immediately. So I'm like, no biology for the summer for me.
Noted.
And it just seemed kind of boring at the time to me. So I chose chemistry by default. And decided to do chemistry for the summer. And we got in that lab. They introduced us to the periodic table, and it was just like, whew, the world just opened up to me. And I'm saying, okay, so I can mix these 2 compounds or these 2 elements together and make my own, make something new. I can tell where everything comes from just with this periodic table. And it was just like you said, eureka moment for me. I was like, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. It's so much fun. Oh my God, let's do this. And I got back to school, and junior year was actually the year that I took chemistry. I mean, enjoyed it. It was a blast, and just stuck with it and majored in chemistry at Xavier and went on to get my PhD.
That is amazing, because I never had that. I mean, you know what that really points out, Sherica, is just how different people's kind of psyche or internal workings are, because I never had that experience with the periodic table. I looked at it and was like, what evil language is this, right? What are they trying to do?
Yeah.
So,
it's the best. I mean, I still look at it now and think, what can I make that's new?
Interesting.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, so you obviously, not just school, but in your career, you've had some notable, let's say, to say the least, some notable accomplishments and experiences. I think it's really interesting when you hear about somebody's eureka moment like that, right? Isn't it sort of kismet, the way that you kind of backed into something that you were clearly a natural to? Think about how close you were to not getting into chemistry, right?
Exactly.
It's interesting how that works. But you've had so many notable moments, some more uplifting than others, but you were involved with Columbia when that shuttle went down, correct?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So let me just start that story off by saying, you know, I don't know where everyone sits spiritually, but as I look back over my journey and my career, I can definitely see the hand of God just guiding me and protecting me throughout the whole process. And, you know, it not being me, not by, you know, my own accomplishments or my own knowledge or anything like that. It's just been how God has positioned me to be where I need to be and to accomplish what I need to accomplish for certain times in our history. And I can look back from when I went to Xavier and, you know, how I was a part of minority access to research careers. And I presented some papers at the American Chemical Society meeting and landed at University of Houston for graduate school. And while I was at University of Houston for graduate school, I presented another paper at American Chemical Society meeting. And it just so happened the poster was on the wall in the hallway when we had a presenter come in. And when he came in, he said, "Hey, who did this work?" And my advisor said, "You're in luck. She's around. I'll let you meet her." It just so happened to be a professor or principal investigator from Sandia National Labs. And so he found me in the lab and he said, "Hey, I'm really interested in this work you're doing. When you graduate, I have a job for you."
Wow.
And I wasn't slated for graduation for a year and a half or two from the moment that he came. And so when it was time for me to graduate, I called him thinking this guy is not going to remember me. But I called him anyway, and he was like, "Yep, I'm sending you a plane ticket for you to come up, check out the place, see if you like it." And that's how I got the postdoc at Sandia National Laboratories. From Sandia National Laboratories, the work that I did there, presented a paper, ran into a recruiter from the Dow Chemical Company, and he hired me right on the spot.
Wow.
And so it was just.
So what you're saying, Sherica, is you make a big first impression. I can see
Clearly,
that.
Yeah. And if she works for you, don't let her out of your sight. Somebody's going to steal her.
And so it's just been, okay, everything has been guided. And so to answer your original question, during the time that I was working at Sandia National Labs, it was just after the Columbia Space Shuttle accident. And I was a new scientist on the block, and I was given that project. At the time, Sandia National Labs was owned by Lockheed Martin. And Lockheed Martin was charged with collecting the pieces of the space shuttle that it could find. But also they wanted to know, upon reentry into the Earth's atmosphere, how can we keep this shuttle from catching on fire again? How can we prevent this from happening again? And that was my project. And so I developed coatings that went onto the NASA space shuttles to prevent them from catching on fire as they re-entered the Earth's atmosphere. And it was very rewarding in that, again, I could use that periodic table and I can just kind of search through and see which of these carbon-carbon composites are better than the current silicon carbide coatings that they were currently using, and what could withstand a lot of heat. And it was a great team to work with to actually get it implemented, because it's one thing to come up with something in the lab, but to implement it is a different thing. And I tell you, just mixing up a bunch of stuff, I'll just call it that, in the lab, was able to come up with something that actually worked. And that particular project was probably the most meaningful for me, because I could actually see the impact that I was having on the world and what I was doing. And it just has turned out to be the gift that keeps on giving, because that one project has landed me so many different opportunities that I couldn't have dreamed of.
So if I can interject for a second, and just to level set for folks that may be young for that disaster, February 1st, 2003, as the Columbia Space Shuttle was re-entering Earth's orbit, it unfortunately and tragically broke apart, killing all 7 astronauts aboard, and it grounded the space shuttle fleet for 29 months, I believe. And so to offer a little background there, but also, Sherica, you described on your interview with us, as you presented that project to kind of the NASA family. Would you talk about that a bit?
Oh, yeah. So after Sandia did all the testing and we implemented, we were invited to Hawaii to the PAC-RIM conference. And at the PAC-RIM conference, I was one of the keynote speakers to present my work on how I developed the coatings and all the test results and all those things. Well, I had presented papers before, but this one was sort of different. Normally I'm in a room that held maybe 20, 30 people. But for this particular presentation, I walk in and I'm almost wowed, because it's this huge conference room and there's hundreds of people in there. And they were mainly folks from NASA, because they wanted to see okay, what is this that, we've come up with? And so the other weird thing about it is that my boss was actually supposed to present at that conference, but he had another thing going on. And so he said, Sherica did the work, let her present it. I think she'll do fine. And so I get there, I present the work just as I normally do, a highly technical talk, but then I noticed a few people in the audience and I see a tear drop. And I'm thinking, okay, nobody's ever been this emotional about, my work. But then afterwards, there was this thunderous applause. People were standing up and they were clapping. And a coworker walked up to me afterwards and he says, Sherica, you got to realize people lost friends. They lost people who they considered as family in the Columbia spatial accident. So for you to get up there and present something gives us hope that we can actually accomplish as the United States of America what we set out to do initially in the beginning. And that's when it hit me. I'm not just mixing up stuff in the lab. I'm doing things to give people hope and to encourage people and to having a great impact on the world. And so that's what keeps me grounded. That's what keeps me with high character, because you can't do this kind of job and not have character and integrity, because there are scientists out there who present false data all the time and it comes back to bite us. And so character and integrity are a major component of what I do and what I seek out in other people when I hire them.
Thank you for sharing that. So Greg, what's some of your takeaway there?
I think about not just chemistry, but people having that kind of impact on people. That had to be an awakening even for you and moving. I'm sure it's certainly moving now. But to realize that that chemistry can have that effect on people's lives. Think about how many times a kid in high school has said, when am I ever going to use this again? Right. And that is a great example of when you're ever going to use it. It could be something, it could be anything. It could be algebra or trigonometry or chemistry or whatever, but it's worth learning because you could change or save someone's life with it. So, I think that's the really impactful part of that.
Yes, absolutely.
The other thing that really resonates with me, Greg, and very well said, both of y'all, is, that sense of a greater purpose, that sense of a greater mission. And that was almost like a eureka moment for you that folks, families and colleagues, and they're depending on you to protect not only the mission, but the lives of those involved. And that is, that's, hopefully everyone listening to this will have that eureka moment where they see how they fit in to the greater good and the greater purpose. It really, it changes lives. So I thanks so much for sharing. So Greg, from that, I don't know, that's one of my favorite things from last interview.
Yeah. So I'm curious. Obviously you do hire people and you do observe your colleagues and you do obviously lead with your knowledge and your expertise and your research and your deliverables. But I'm curious, either from your perspective or your perspective of somebody else, what is a kind of a key leadership moment, a key leadership lesson that you've learned that you would share with the community here?
So here recently, I would say the key thing is, especially with everything that's going on in the world, is for leaders to realize that leadership is a service and a privilege. It's not an opportunity for you to beat up on people with your role or your power. And so one of the key things here recently that I've been able to add to my toolkit is, I don't know if you guys have heard of courageous conversations. And it is basically a compass that's used to have conversations about race, but I use that compass to have conversations about anything, especially in my leadership role. And just to give some background on what this is you can imagine just a compass with a north-south, east-west axis. And in your northeast axis, it's going to be different attributes that people possess, like their morals and their beliefs and things like that. And if you go around clockwise on the compass, you'll see intellectual and thinking on your northwest axis. And then on your southwest axis, is going to be social, people who act socially, the people who do things and who are like your protesters, the people who are eager to get out there and protest. And then on your southeast axis, it's going to be your emotional people who feel things. Excuse me, allergy season here in Texas.
I get it. We get it.
Believe me, we get it in Georgia.
And so in terms of leadership, knowing how to converse with people and use that compass has been eye-opening for me. And if people could get this and learn how to use this compass. So basically what you do is you're tapping into where a person is coming from in that axis. You join them there and bring them to where you need them to go. So for example, if I have a employee and I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic and let's say they lost a parent. As a leader, I need to get into that emotional box with them before I start talking to them about their performance or their deliverables. And I think a lot of leaders miss that. They miss that whole connecting with a person before you ask them to do something or to deliver anything for you. And I think you've probably heard this saying a million times over that people lead leaders. They don't leave companies.
Right.
They lead leaders. And so if leaders could get that, think about the deliverables and the performance and the different things that you can get out of a person once you connect with them with wherever they may be. If they're the protester, connect with them there. If they're big on morals and beliefs, connect with them there. So that means you have to do the work as a leader too, right? You have to know yourself well enough and the things that you need to work on in your unconscious biases to be able to deliver in this fashion and to influence. So you want to lead by influence and not by fear.
So Greg, I know we're talking your language. I know we all love talking leadership and practical, real leadership, action focused, that servant leadership. You're always looking to improve how you go about it. Greg, what's some thoughts that based on what Sherica just shared?
I think that I have to say this, it exposes the kind of leaders that you've been exposed to. And I'm sorry for that, because you've clearly had that experience of those kind of leaders. There are the kind of leaders that you are and that you talk about out there. And, so I think we have to acknowledge that there are both that exist. And I think the compass precept, I've heard of the book. I have. We talked about that on I think we talked about that, Scott, on a Logistics with Purpose episode, but I haven't read it, but it sounds incredibly valuable, and I already get it. I mean, I get the meeting people where they are. Great leaders, they're not leaders because they have a title, as you said. They're leaders because people follow them, and people follow them because they feel comfortable and cared for and inspired by these people. And I think it was somebody here in the comments when we were having a discussion about leadership a week or so ago that said, there's a difference between a boss and a leader. There's a difference between a manager and a leader. And the truth is, you can lead from this is something I encourage people about all the time. You can lead from wherever you are.
Absolutely.
Right? We were just talking about the space program, and when the president went into a hangar in, I think it was Houston, went into a hangar and talked to the janitor there who was sweeping the floor, and he said, "What is your job?" And he said, my job is to put a man on the moon.
Mm.
So, you know, you can lead from wherever you are. There are people who are changed by their environment, and there are people who change their environment. Clearly, you're the latter. That is right, latter. You change your environment. so I'm terrible at that former and latter thing.
Yeah.
But clearly you do that, and I think that's commendable. And I really think that is a fantastic recommendation, right? Courageous conversations, correct?
Agreed. Yes.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Courageous conversations.
So I want to share a couple of comments and a question before Greg continues, because we're going to ask about some of the recognition, Sherica, that you had received. But let me share a couple of these comments here. So first off, Amanda says that she was fortunate she did not blow up her house with a chemistry set her and her dad played around in the basement. Not a scientist. It makes two of us.
There's
Amanda.
not enough volume to make a compound that could actually blow up the house, but it could smoke the ceiling in your bedroom. I can confirm.
Right, absolutely.
So Jenny is with us. Jenny Froome, great to have you via Johannesburg, South Africa. Great to see you here. Look forward to our upcoming live stream. So back to Rachel, talking about a noble mission. So her husband worked on flame resistant paint coatings too, with the PhD in organic chemistry. Worked on paint for homes that could be exposed to wildfires. Very cool. Also flame resistant face paint, probably I guess for firefighters and others. That is remarkable.
Yeah. I need to connect with her husband.
Yes, you do, no doubt.
I still work on flame retardant plastics.
Really? We got to get y'all connected on a show that's I don't know, about 17 pay grades above mine. And I'll speak for myself, Greg. Lots of comments from folks that really love what you shared there, both in the previous story and about talking leadership. And finally, I want to share a couple things here. So Peter watched the shuttle tragedies live on TV at the time, once leaving Walt Disney World with the kids on a trip with Dreams Take Flight National that they watched, heard, and felt the shuttle take off. Quite the experience. He also saw it in that iconic, when the shuttle used to be on the back of the 747. That was such an iconic thing. I never saw that in person flying overhead or anything, but it had some models. Such a really cool part of that shuttle program.
Yeah.
Simon calls it humanistic leadership. I love that.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Peter says it was a mic drop moment, leaving leaders, not companies. Love that. I agree with you. Hugo says a boss says me and a leader says us, our team. And then finally, I'm going to get to a question before we get back to the interview here. And the question comes from Alay. Her comment first is, in my country, everywhere there are teams with very minimal abilities and qualifications, maybe corruption in lots of governmental entities. She's proud to be one of the protesters against al-Bashir regime. So now we need leaders with special capabilities to lead the old teams and replacements. And then to her question, and Sherica, I'd love to get your take, and Greg, welcome yours too. What if the team is old-fashioned and requires lots of motivation? What would your advice be there, Sherica?
So I would recommend, this book. It's called Get Your Shift in Order. And with that, I was given
enunciated very carefully.
I know, and that's why I have to say it slow.
Right.
But I was given this book by a mentor when I worked for the Dow Chemical Company. And it was because I was getting ready to start to lead a group that had baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Z, millennial. I mean, it was just full of a bunch of different people from a bunch of different areas. So it was a global group as well. And so what it does is it kind of brings different perspectives from, as you would call it, Alay, old-fashioned, into your realm of eyesight. So it'll help you to understand, where they're coming from and why they feel the way they feel and why it may seem old-fashioned. But a lot of times, old-fashioned things incorporated with the new things that you could bring to the table are innovative. And so I would say, don't look to totally discard the old-fashioned point of view, but figure out how you can incorporate it into your new point of view and make something new.
I like that. it makes me think of a comic book movie. My son loves all the Marvel comic book movies, and there's a superhero that was getting beaten up, and whatever laser ray or whatever it was, he turned it around to make it a weapon. Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of what you're talking about. Take the nature of the situation and take all the negatives and turn on its head and use that in efforts to make it a better place, better organization, more effort, or more progress rather. Greg, as I turn the baton back to you, and before you move on to the next one, what would be your take on making hay out of old-fashioned cultures or teams?
Well, I've done it a ton in my career. I started at a very young age. In fact, I annoyed the hell out of one of my uncles. When they were thinking about having children, I was the oldest grandchild, so they took me to the zoo, and he said, no matter what I said, your question was why, and I've been that way ever since. So that's the way we've always done it has never played well with me, and I have been disruptive in service to a company, and I have been disruptive in disservice to myself at a company by questioning these old-fashioned standards. And honestly, I mean, I'd have to say that my advice would be either decide to fight or decide to leave. It's as simple as that. Now, how you do it, you can do it very diplomatically, right? Of course, and you should, because you always have to keep the goal in mind. You're not trying to pound somebody into submission either, even if they are you. You're trying to help them see the light, to awaken to a new way of doing things. And if you want people to change from their old-fashioned ways to new ways, you can't just say this is the new way. You have to appeal to their self-interest. Why is it in the self-interest of your great uncle to buy a new tractor rather than continue to use the old 5520 narrow two-wheel tractor that why? Because if you turn that tractor too sharp, it rolls over and it could hurt somebody or worse. So sorry, that was a very personal story. But it is those kind of things, right? It is, you have to appeal to people's self-interest, and you have to, as Sherica was just saying, you have to meet them where they are, and you have to acknowledge what their self-interest is, whether it's altruistic or not. You have to recognize somebody's self-interest, and if you want to make progress, you have to appeal to that, and you have to appease that to some extent to get to where you need to go.
Yeah, so it's all about the influence of where you're trying to go, right? So if you have a specific goal in mind, and that person, are they data driven? If they're data driven, then you present the data as to why you want to move to a certain area that's away from where they currently are. And that a lot of times, like myself, I'm analytical and data driven. If somebody puts it in front of me black and white with the data, then hey, I'm more apt to move to their side of the river than where I'm standing.
Right.
So it's just like you said, their self-interest. What is it? And appeal to it and influence that way.
All right. Yeah. Love that. I think we could have a 12-hour leadership discussion with you, Sherica, but for the sake of time, so I want to get some the kind of second half here. So Greg, where are we going next?
Well, I mean, okay, so we've established that you had some really impactful projects and jobs. We've established you know a lot and obviously share a lot and can give a lot in terms of leadership. I'm curious because Scott only touched on a very small portion of your accolades. I'm curious, of all of the accolades and awards that you've received, what one do you think that you see as the most meaningful?
Oh yeah, it would be. So I mentioned the work at Sandia is the gift that keeps on giving. So that work was implemented in 2006. Here we are, 2017, and I get a call that I am being considered as a hidden figure of Dallas for my contributions to science and technology. And I'm thinking, what science and technology, what contribution? And they bring up the space shuttle work. And they said that our Congresswoman would be involved, and I had to submit a packet, and they came back, a couple of months later and said, "Yeah, you're the one for us. We're gonna name you as a 2017 Hidden Figure of Dallas." And it was great because it was at the same time that the movie was released, so people could connect with what it meant and what my contributions might have been, and all that good stuff. And I got to kind of hang out with our Congresswoman, Eddie Bernice Johnson, and got at the time some certificates and plaques from the White House. And to me, it was the most meaningful because it was a kind of a nod that, hey, what you've contributed means something to me, means something to the world, and it was extremely impactful. And so, I got to share in it with my family. They were invited to the presentation of the award, and it was great. So that one, head over heels, has probably been the most meaningful.
Huge. And I apologize. We're having some audio issues, evidently. And I think we're getting some reverb now. And I hate to take away from that powerful, the hidden figures recognition that came up in our last interview with you. And I want to talk a little more about that here today. Is the sound good?
Greg, check. Can you hear me?
Are y'all good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. We're
I'm
back.
Not sure if that, I don't know who that was or if that was just internet, but I got to tell you that, that it came out when you said hidden figures, it really made me think of that. And when you mentioned the timing, I thought, how fortuitous is that?
Uh-huh.
It comes out at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, some of that noise was a little bit distracting.
So let me
how do they select that? How do they select you? I mean, how are you nominated and selected there? Did someone nominate you?
Yes, it was actually a mentee of mine.
Wow.
Who was currently the president of the National Society for Black Engineers. I was R&D director at the time for Authentics. Authentics is a global company that makes chemical markers for oil and gas fuel around the country. And so I was the R&D director making markers at the time, and she actually worked in our engineering department. And I kind of, as soon as she walked in the door, noticed her, took her on as a mentee. Didn't know she was the president of the NSBE Association, but she was. And a year later, here she is. She's like, "Oh, you've been great for me. I've learned so much. I'm going to nominate you for this award that I heard that was coming up through my organization." And that's how it happened.
So let me, I want to steal a page from Greg's book. A moment ago, he mentioned how his uncle took him to the zoo, and the only question he had repeatedly all day was why. So, Sherica, why was that? Why is that? Of all the accolades, we shared a few as we were introducing you, and there's plenty of others. Why is that award so important to you?
Well, it's multifaceted. One, it's important to me because I'm very passionate about giving back to the community. And so when the young lady walked through the door of my company, and I noticed her, and I began to mentor her and pour back into her, it was sort of a thank you. Her nomination of me for the award was a thank you, and it was something to me to say, okay, you're on the right track. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing and what you're called to do. And then secondly, the other part of it was that once she nominated me and my packet was accepted by the congressional fellows at the time and noticed, it was a nod at what I had contributed technically. And so if I ever wondered, am I doing something that's impactful? Is my technical work, does it mean anything? It was a moment in time where I could say, yes, it means something. So that's why that one was the most important.
I love it. And
more than your technical work too. I mean, clearly it's really, really rare. I'm not sure that everyone understands that someone who you have mentored nominates you for something. It's usually someone who sees you do your work, not experiences the power of your leadership that nominates you for those kind of accolades. So that's really, really impressive. I get that facet of it completely, right? And it does show something outside of your technical acumen, which is clearly substantial, right? Your ability to lead, the humanistic leadership. Let's just steal that, Sherica. You know, you didn't know who this person was. You didn't know whether they were a nobody or a somebody or anybody, and you just saw something and guided them. And you know, I think that speaks a lot to what you were talking about before, character and principles. So yeah, I get why that one is so meaningful to you. But it is a representation of who you are, not what you did.
Right. And it was also something that my family could connect to, because they're not scientists and they don't always know, okay, I just know she's doing something in the lab, you know. But this one, they could watch the movie, because we hadn't seen the movie when they called me about the award. But we could all sit down and watch it together, and they could connect and say, oh, we get it now, you know, because when they're on pins and needles waiting on that shuttle to come back, you know, that was me when the next shuttle went up. I was on pins and needles like, okay, let's, you know, this has to work.
Right.
You know.
So folks, if you're one of the 3 people that have not seen the movie Hidden Figures, do yourself a big favor and make sure to set some time aside to either read the book or watch the movie this weekend. One of the NASA engineers, computers, as people were known back then, right? Folks that crunch some numbers, Mary Jackson, talk about an incredible journey. You know, when John Glenn, he didn't trust some of what the machine computers were telling him. He wanted Mary Jackson to get these figures right. And if Mary said it, he trusted it. And that's just one of the many anecdotes. But what a powerful, thank you for sharing that Hidden Figures experience with us, Sherica. And now I want to transition a bit. So, because you're talking about mentees and mentorship, right? And I know from our previous conversation just how important that is for you and how passionate you are about it. And yes, Jenny, it does see why the good ones, the good professional associations are important, the good ones out there. Great point. But, you know, if you're speaking to, you know, based on, you know, the leadership message you have today and the passion and your point of view that you have today, I want to pose 2 questions to you. The first one is if you're in that big room, you were painting a picture earlier as you were sharing that really important pivotal project with NASA, and you're describing this huge, massive room of folks. Let's mentally go into that room. And in this question, folks sitting in those seats are organizational leaders across industry and across the globe. So what would you like to tell those people right now?
From my seat, I would like to remind them that they hold the keys to employee decisions. So what I mean by that is they hold the cards when it comes to talent acquisition, to promotions, to building the pipeline of future employees. They hold all these cards. And so 50 to 70% of an employee's experience comes from their interaction with their leader. That's what the data says, 50 to 70%. So you as leaders in that Coliseum, if you know that 50 to 70% of that employee's interaction experience comes from their interaction with you, then what are you going to do with that employee once you have them in your company? Think about that and do the work to engage and make that person feel like they are delivering on something that has purpose. So a lot of times we write these job descriptions that are just that.
They make no sense.
Bullet points. But what people really want is they want to know that I am having an impact and there is purpose behind the work that I'm doing. Just like you said with the janitor, I'm putting a person on the moon, right? So imagine if that person was applying for that janitorial job and the job description said that. as opposed to, I need you to sweep the floor and clean the sinks and those things. Instead,
Right.
I need you to help me put a person on the moon. So it's we as organizational leaders take a look at the big picture and not just see what we want a person to do from a task-oriented perspective, but from a vision-oriented perspective. We would have much better employees that delivered a lot more, and they'd be happier.
Wow. All right. So I got to tell you, Greg, I've heard that anecdote, and we've talked about that anecdote, and we've created content around that anecdote for years. And that's the first time I've heard it kind of in that context of putting that into the job description, the mission,
Sure.
the greater. That is what that's worth the price of mission right there, Sherica. Greg, your thoughts?
Well, it's an absolute necessity these days. Gen Z and Gen Y both absolutely demand it. They want to know what they're working for. And the truth is, the only difference is the demanding it. Because if you look at some of the statistics that Sherica is referring to, people, they want to know that they are respected. They want recognition. They want relevance in their role, right? And they want to have that higher purpose. That relevance means, am I doing something meaningful? Am I meeting a higher purpose, right? So if you just keep those 3 R's in mind, then you can do right by your people. And yes, of course, give them something to look toward, because it's a tough environment. I can't believe we're saying that just a year later, right? After 22% or whatever unemployment, right? So, but you know, you're competing for the best of the best, and if you want the best, you have to give them something to aim for, a North Star.
Love that.
Absolutely.
Love that.
And I mean,
All right.
when you talk to people now that leave jobs, what do they say? Oh, my mom died and they didn't even care, or you know, something like that. Most of the time, you get complaints. It's about the lack of compassion from the leadership, the lack of engagement and connection. So that's what we have to deal with.
I love that. All right. So folks,
So remember that that those 2 strategies I said, right? Either fight or flee. In that case, if they don't care about your mother, flee. Right? Go find a job somewhere else. That there is something wrong with the culture of that company.
Amen. Right? Amen. All right. So folks, we may go over just a couple minutes here, but I don't want to share because it's such a great interview. If we have to go 3 hours, we'll go 3 hours.
I'm here. You guys got me for the day.
Awesome. Well, Aaron says it's amazing. Love what you shared. We got a lot of the comments along those lines. I agree with Aaron. Aaron, hope this finds you well. Aaron Smetak. Tom agrees with Greg. Both of y'all. Jobs these days have got to be purpose driven. They got to be purpose driven. So, all right. So, Sherica, both of y'all essentially were speaking kind of to and certainly referencing, you know, the earlier generations, right? Folks that may be finishing up their degrees these days, or maybe they're pre-college, or maybe they just broke into industry. And maybe they've been in it for, you know, months, a couple months or a couple years. If you had those in that Coliseum, I'm gonna steal that term from you, Coliseum moment. If you had their captive attention for the next minute or two, what would you share with those folks?
I think I've said it a bunch of times before, if not here, definitely in certain other arenas. When I'm talking to new leaders or aspiring leaders, I cannot stress enough for them to do the work. You think you want to be a leader, but first recognize that leadership is not a power play. Good leaders recognize leadership as a service and a privilege, not a right. And once you get that, and once you do the work, then come to the realization or figure out if you're willing to show up and be a great leader. And what I mean by that is that willing to show up and be objective, willing to show up and have those courageous conversations and tough conversations, especially in the climate that we're living in today, and willing to show up and serve. And once you come to that realization that, hey, yeah, this is for me and this is what I want to do. I want to help somebody else. I'm not seeking leadership so somebody can help me. Then you might be ready to step out into the leadership role, but not before then. not before then. Make sure you get everything you need to on the groundwork, because the last thing that I want to happen to anybody, especially an aspiring leader, is for them to get out on that platform and then be exposed for something that they never meant for the world to know.
Mm. All right. So the theme today, do the work. Sherica, how can I earn my PhD and obtain recognition, leadership roles? Do the work. Hey, how can I advance in supply chain and get big salaries and do big things? Do the work. That is such a simple but powerful piece of advice to folks, regardless where you are in your journey. So never mail it in. Do the work. All right. So before we make sure folks know how to connect with Sherica, everyone's going to be wanting, if they haven't already, wanting a piece of your time, Sherica. It's I felt enlightened and educated and energized after the last time I spent an hour with you, and I feel the same way right this moment. So, and I'm sure I'm not alone. Greg, what's your take on what she just shared, or to do the work mantra?
Yeah, well, there's a couple aspects of it. John Locke said, a political philosopher, said, the more powerful you are, the less power you have, because you become by default this servant, this keeper, this protector of the masses over which you arguably rule. He was talking about political rulers at the time, right? You have to keep care of those people. And I think that servant leadership mantra is, you have to acknowledge that you are as much serf as you are leader, right? You are as much serf as you are whatever they call those, nobles, right? So you have to recognize that. And I think the other thing is this sort of mythical concept that leadership instantly allows you to change everything. Mostly what it forces you to change is yourself. Because the Peter principle in and of itself is you rise to the level of your incompetence, right? You get to the next level, you have no idea what to do at the next level. And so you have to recognize that you do have to do the work, because you're the one who's going to need the work first when you are elevated to a new level of authority. So
right. And the reward, there are rewards in it. So we don't want to paint a picture that, you get to a leadership role and everything's going to be humdrum, and there are rewards in it. And I find the reward in that employee that I managed 10 years ago calling me and saying, hey, I pulled a presentation that you gave on leadership 10 years ago, and man, I hit it out of the park with the board, or thank you for putting in a word for me to get that job. Now I got the job and I'm getting promoted, something like that. That's where the reward is.
Yeah. The work is the work. The reward is the people, right?
All right. So much goodness here. I'm going to share a couple comments, and then we're going to make sure folks know how to connect with Sherica. Todd, the Rainmaker, says a great one. One's purpose is not driven by their job. If your job is a tool for accomplishing your purpose, then all the better. Excellent point there, Todd. Enrique, host of Logistics with Purpose, host of Supply Chain Now in Espanol, and nominee for Best Hair in Supply Chain, along with Greg White and many others. He says
he's leading.
He is leading. The few followers convert the lone nut into a leader. So leadership is too glorified. If you believe in something, be brave to lead someone else. Excellent point. Aaron says she's only caught last 5 minutes, inspired, ready to run through walls. I agree with you.
Thank you, Aaron.
And Peter was laughing at the Peter principle. There's a variety of Peter principles, but
I guess every principle for him is the Peter principle. Right. Yeah.
Right. All right. So one last question. Are you, not to put you on the spot, but I've already gotten a couple texts. Are you accepting new mentees?
I am. I actually converted over a crew of my mentees to mentors, which was it was a lot of fun. So, I mentored a group of kids from high school to college, and now they're in medical school. So I just converted them over to mentors for some of my new kids that just came in through high school. So I have open spots, if that makes any sense, because they're covering some of my other groups. So yes, I am. And I can be found on LinkedIn if you want to connect there. And we'll move forward from there. And I'll just let everybody know my style of mentorship is that you lead it pretty much. So you talk as much as you want to talk to me. You have complete access to me. So it's not that we have to schedule a meeting and plan to talk every month. It's based on what you want and what your needs are.
I like that. And I believe her. Greg.
Yeah, I'm going to go sign up now.
Well, it's been as advertised. Sherica, you're a blessing. I love how you kind of that practical, no nonsense type of interview and discussion. Been there, done that. It's not theoretical. It's real and it's inspiring. And no wonder why everyone else and all the other organizations out there have been recognizing it. So you may need to build a new addition to your
trophy case. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Because a lot more to come.
I'm thinking.
Oh, my husband's on that. He's always on it.
Oh, wonderful, man.
He makes room.
Well, thanks so much for carving some time out and spending some more time with us here today. We've gotten a ton of comments as expected. I know you're used to it, but Sherrika Sanders, Ph.D., thanks so much for joining us, and we'll have to reconnect with you again real soon.
Thank you so much. It's been great hanging out with you guys.
Yeah.
All right. Wow, that swoosh waits for no one. Holy cow.
Thanks, Sherica.
But that's the type of, if we're not careful with the time, because we want to respect her time for sure, I'd love to just open up and have some Q&A for the next hour or two and just, enjoy that company and enjoy that.
Well, as Peter said, I was going to get in line and also get a drink and let's just start gabbing. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's see. Simon says, thank you. Great interview and insight. Boom, with an exclamation mark. How about that? Let's see here. Mervin says, thanks for sharing your experiences, Sherica. It looks like some folks were commenting. Azalea, that's right. Azalea Davis, she got her degree in biology, didn't it? What was her degree in? One of the very complicated degree programs. Biomedical science, I think, is what she got her undergrad in as she's looking to break into industry. We might have to get them connected. But
I think that's kind of the common thread is they were acknowledging the passion of Azalea and kind of common philosophies, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Well, a lot of good stuff there. Wonderful, wonderful hour spent with Sherica. All right. So Greg, out of all the goodness that Sherica just dropped on us and all the wonderful folks in the comments, our team, the producers behind the scenes, if you had to pick one, what was your favorite part of that conversation?
Simon says humanistic leadership. And I think whether that term has existed before or not, I think Sherica is she's a fantastic representation of that. Right. You can tell that it's all about the people. It is all about the people. And I have to acknowledge that as a scientist, that probably has to be fairly difficult, although she's clearly an exceptional scientist, obviously exceptionally personable. A lot of what she's experienced, I think, in terms of leadership challenges or, woes from less than, shall we say, empathic leaders is largely because of the personality type of scientists or engineers and others frequently, right? I mean, it's not always the case that those of us with an engineering mindset are that personable. So she is so aware and obviously so well read and continues to learn. So, she is doing the work. That's
you
that's
stole
the
it,
other thing.
man.
She is doing the work that she is encouraging people to do.
Amen. Well, hey,
So,
Alay puts it great here. She says, if supply chain had more leaders like Sherica, the world would be a better place for everyone. I think is what she meant to wrap
faster.
on. Faster. Yeah, better place faster. Sorry. I agree wholeheartedly with you, Alay, wholeheartely. Greg, you stole my do the work. That was one of my favorite things.
Dang it. I'm sorry. Let me
It's one of
take
those
that back.
It's one of those things that you can just stick between your ears and remind yourself every time you have that moment. Do the work. Do the work. You got to believe that the work is going to pay off, regardless of what that work means for you. You know, just that again, that NASA story is such a powerful testimony, that moment that hopefully we all have, that what you do is, number one, valuable, but number two, plays a critical role in the greater good. You know, there's such that's a gratifying moment if you ever had that, and for it to be that impactful was certainly a big favorite part.
How about the strain she communicated when the next one took off? She took personal responsibility for that craft keeping those people safe, right?
Yes.
That's huge. I mean, that's, you know, it's that kind of thing that makes that really gives you the right to demand a higher purpose. You have to care that much. Right.
I love that. All right. So finally, Simon says he just made up humanistic leadership on the spot based on Sherrika's leadership vision. Somebody else must have said it first. Surely someone else. Don't call me
Maybe they
Sherrika.
didn't, Simon.
Yeah.
And you know what's coming next.
Yes. Peter says the meaningful for me is important. Making it meaningful. I'm with you. Okay. Well, we could all go on for sure. We've got plenty of t-shirt isms, lots of notes. This hour and some change was as impactful and enjoyable as we all knew it would be. So thanks for everybody for tuning in. Thanks for contributing.
Yeah.
You know, your take on what you were hearing and your gratitude for Sherica sharing. Big thanks to Sherrika Sanders, Ph.D. for joining us, as busy as she is these days. Big thanks to our team that makes it happen behind the scenes. Amanda and Clay and Allie, I believe, here today. Greg, a pleasure to do these conversations.
Likewise.
To share these conversations with folks wherever they are. I mean, this is part of our why. This is part of our work, and we got to do it each and every day. So on that note, wherever you are, have a wonderful week. I tell you, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Check out Hidden Figures. That will pull everything together in a very beautiful movie or book. And do good, give forward, be the change, be just like Sherrika Sanders, Ph.D.
Amen.
And the world would be a better place. On that note, we'll see you next time here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.